7-year-old Lily Morgan lived at the edge of nowhere. Her parents, Jack and Beth Morgan, had chosen Ashera Prime as their new home 3 years ago. It was a quiet colony world that most people had forgotten about. Their small farm sat right where civilization ended and wild country began. Beyond their fence line, thick forests stretched for miles, full of twisted trees and strange sounds that echoed at night. Most kids weren't allowed to go past the cleared areas. But Lily was different. She was curious about everything, always asking questions, always wanting to see what was over the next hill. Her parents knew they couldn't keep her locked up, so they taught her to be careful instead. One warm afternoon, Lily was supposed to be doing her reading lessons on the tablet her mom had given her. But the words seemed boring compared to the bright sunshine outside. She glanced toward the kitchen where her mother was cooking. Her father was out fixing the water pump. Neither would notice if she slipped away for just a little while. She headed toward the rocky hills behind their property, further than she'd ever gone before. The ground got steeper, the trees grew thicker, and strange purple moss covered everything. Then she saw it, a dark opening in the hillside, almost completely hidden by hanging vines that moved slightly in the breeze. Lily pushed the vines aside and peered into the darkness. Cool air drifted out, carrying a smell like old metal and dust. She should have gone back. Should have told her parents. But something about that cave called to her. She stepped inside. The tunnel was narrow at first, forcing her to walk sideways in some spots. But after about 50 feet, it opened into something massive. The ceiling soared so high above her that she couldn't see it. Strange glowing moss covered the walls, giving off a soft blue-green light that let her see everything clearly. And there, in the center of the enormous cavern, was something that made her stop and stare. It looked like a giant lizard at first. But as her eyes adjusted, she realized it was much more than that. The creature was huge, bigger than her house. Its body was covered in scales that should have been beautiful but instead looked cracked and faded, like old paint peeling off a wall. Its wings were folded tight against its sides, so thin she could see the bones underneath. Ribs stuck out from its chest. It looked like it hadn't eaten in years. Around the creature, strange lights flickered in the air. They formed patterns like invisible walls made of electricity. Sometimes they glowed bright, sometimes they almost disappeared. They made crackling sounds that echoed through the cave. As Lily watched, the creature's eyes slowly opened. They were enormous, each one bigger than her whole head. They were deep golden color like old coins, and when they focused on her, she felt like they could see right through her. These weren't animal eyes. They were aware, intelligent, and incredibly, impossibly old. Lily knew she should be terrified. This was clearly a dangerous creature, trapped here for who knows how long. But all she could think was how sad it looked. How alone. How much it seemed to be suffering. "Hi there," she whispered, her voice barely making a sound. "Are you hungry?" The creature didn't move. Didn't make a sound. But something in those ancient eyes changed. A flicker of surprise, maybe. Or hope. Lily made a decision right then. She turned and ran back through the tunnel, out into the sunlight and back to her house. She snuck into the kitchen and grabbed some leftover chicken from lunch, wrapping it in a cloth. She filled a container with water from the sink. Then she ran back to the cave as fast as her legs could carry her. The creature was still watching when she returned. Lily approached slowly, carefully. Those energy barriers crackled louder as she got close, but they didn't stop her. She didn't know why. She just walked right through them like they weren't even there. She set the food and water down near the creature's massive head. "Here. I know it's not much, but it's what I could bring." The creature looked at the food for a long moment. Then, moving so slowly it seemed painful, it lowered its head and took the chicken in its mouth. It swallowed without chewing. Lily smiled. "I'll bring more tomorrow. I promise." And she did. Every single day after her lessons, Lily would sneak food and water to the cave. Her parents thought she was just playing in the woods. They had no idea she'd found something impossible. She started bringing other things too. Her toy blocks. Her coloring books. Her stuffed animals. She'd sit with the creature for hours talking about everything and nothing. About how her dad's tractor broke down. About the book she was reading. About how she wished she could see other planets someday. The creature never made a sound. Never moved much. But it always watched her with those knowing eyes. And slowly, week by week, it started to change. The scales began to look less dull. The ribs didn't show as much. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, those scales would catch the glow from the moss and sparkle like stars in the night sky. "I'm going to call you Shimmer," Lily announced one day, "because you shine when the light hits you. Do you like that name?" She could have sworn the creature's eyes brightened just a little. One afternoon she brought painted stones she'd made herself. Want to learn checkers? It's really easy. You move the pieces like this and you try to jump over mine. Here, I'll show you. She set up the board and started explaining the rules, moving the pieces to demonstrate. Shimmer watched every movement with complete focus. Lily had no idea if the creature understood, but it seemed to be paying attention at least. While Lily played checkers with her secret friend, something very different was happening on the other side of the galaxy. In a massive space station that orbited a dying star, leaders from 100 different worlds gathered around a circular table. Humans sat next to aliens with 6 eyes. Creatures made of living crystal stood beside beings that looked like walking trees. They all shared one thing: fear. Thomas Grant, Earth's ambassador, watched the holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a map of the galaxy with dark spots spreading like ink stains. Each dark spot represented a place where reality itself was breaking down. The void breaches are getting bigger, said the council leader, an alien woman with 4 arms named Vareth. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook as she manipulated the display. We've lost 12 whole sectors. 40 colonies have gone completely silent. We send ships to investigate and they just disappear. What about Verathorn? Thomas demanded, slamming his hand on the table. Where is the Guardian? The room went silent. Everyone knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it. Finally Vareth spoke. The Guardian hasn't been seen in 200 years. We've searched everywhere. Every planet, every station, every asteroid. He's just gone. Without him, the barriers are falling apart, added another council member. We estimate we have maybe 3 months before the void breaks through completely. And when it does, everything ends. All of us. Every world. Just gone. Thomas sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of those words. The Dragon Guardian Verathorn had protected the galaxy for 10,000 years. He held back the darkness that existed between dimensions. Without him, that darkness was coming through, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Back on HFY Prime, Lily sat cross-legged in the cave, completely unaware that the galaxy was dying. She was too busy explaining checker strategies to Shimmer. See, if you move here then I can't jump you, she said, sliding a red stone across the cave floor. It's all about thinking ahead. Shimmer watched her with those ancient eyes. And deep inside his mind, buried under centuries of pain and imprisonment, something began to wake up. Memories stirred. Old purposes remembered. A reason to try again. The little girl who visited him every day had no idea what she was doing. She just saw something that needed help and she helped it. Simple as that. But her simple kindness was about to change everything. Beth Morgan was washing dishes when she noticed something strange through the kitchen window. Her daughter Lily was walking through the garden, and wherever she stepped, the flowers seemed to grow faster. Not just a little faster, impossibly fast. A wilted rose bush suddenly burst into full bloom as Lily passed by. Dead grass turned green under her feet. Beth dropped the plate she was holding. It clattered in the sink. Jack, she called out, her voice tight. Jack, come here. Right now. Her husband walked in from the hallway, wiping grease from his hands. He'd been fixing the old generator again. What's wrong? Look at her. Beth pointed out the window with a shaking finger. They both watched as Lily knelt down to examine a flower. The moment her hand touched the soil, an entire patch of wildflowers sprouted up around her, blooming in seconds. Lily laughed with delight, completely unaware that anything unusual was happening. Jack's face went pale. How long has this been going on? I don't know. I just noticed it now. Beth turned to face her husband. But there's more. Have you noticed she hasn't been sick in weeks? Remember how she used to get allergies every spring? They're completely gone. And yesterday I saw her fall off the porch steps. She should have scraped her knees badly. But she just floated down. Like gravity forgot about her for a second. Jack ran his hand through his hair, a habit he had when he was worried. Where does she go every day? She's always disappearing for hours. She says she's playing. Exploring. She mentioned something about the caves once. They looked at each other and the same thought passed between them. Something was happening to their daughter and they had no idea what. Meanwhile, deep in the cave, Lily was experiencing something incredible. She sat cross-legged on the stone floor, facing Shimmer, and for the first time she felt something coming from him. Not words exactly, but feelings. Emotions that weren't hers. When she smiled, warmth flooded through her chest, like drinking hot chocolate on a cold day. When she felt sad about something, gentle comfort wrapped around her thoughts, like being hugged by someone who cared. Shimmer, she whispered, her eyes going wide. Can you hear me? Like really hear me? Suddenly, an image flashed in her mind. It wasn't her thought. It came from somewhere else. She saw a dragon, not weak and tired like Shimmer was now, but powerful and magnificent. Its wings stretched across entire star systems. Light poured from its scales. It stood between reality and darkness, holding back something terrible that wanted to break through. Lily gasped. That's you. That's what you really are. Another image came. This one was painful to see. The same dragon, but now it was being attacked. Glowing chains wrapped around it, burning into its scales. Weapons fired from all directions. The dragon fought back, but there were too many enemies. It fell from the sky, crashing into a planet with such force that mountains crumbled. Then darkness. Being buried. Trapped. Forgotten. Alone for so long that time stopped meaning anything. Tears ran down Lily's cheeks. Someone hurt you. Someone trapped you here and left you. She stood up and walked closer, placing her small hand on Shimmer's enormous leg. I'm so sorry that happened to you. She felt something from him then, a wave of gratitude so strong it made her heart ache. And something else. Affection. He cared about her too. I don't care if you're some big scary dragon, Lily said, wrapping her arms around his foreleg in a hug. You're my best friend. And I'm going to help you get better. I promise. Shimmer's scales had changed over the past few weeks. They weren't dull and cracked anymore. Now they gleamed with an inner light, like someone had trapped starlight inside them. Veins of silver and gold ran through the scales, pulsing faintly. His wings, which had been folded tight for so long, occasionally stretched out. When they did, ripples of energy spread through the cave, making the air shimmer and dance. Deep inside his ancient mind, the dragon was remembering who he really was. His name was Verathorn. For 10,000 years, he had served as the guardian of the cosmic threshold. His job was to protect reality itself from the void, the empty nothingness that existed between dimensions. The void was always hungry, always trying to break through and consume everything. Verathorn held it back, maintaining the barriers that kept the universe safe. Then the Architect Collective came. They were beings who wanted to control the gateways between dimensions for their own purposes. They needed Verathorn gone, but they couldn't kill him. He was too powerful, tied too deeply to the fabric of reality itself. So they did something worse. They trapped him. Chained him with ancient magic and buried him on a forgotten world, leaving him to waste away slowly over centuries. But something about his imprisonment didn't make sense. The barriers around him were designed to kill any mortal who touched them. Yet this human child walked through them like they were nothing. The bond growing between them shouldn't be possible either. He was a cosmic being, existing partially outside normal reality. Humans couldn't form connections with creatures like him. Yet here she was. And every day the bond grew stronger. I brought you something, Lily said, pulling a worn book from her backpack. It's my favorite story. Want me to read it to you? She settled against his leg and opened the book, reading aloud by the light of the glowing moss. It was a simple tale about a knight who protected a village from a monster. The knight was scared, but he fought anyway because the people needed him. And the brave knight protected everyone, Lily read, because that's what heroes do. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. Verathorn listened to every word. The story was simple, meant for children. But it reminded him of something he'd forgotten over his long existence. He'd protected the galaxy for 10,000 years, but somewhere along the way he'd forgotten why it mattered. It had become just a job, a duty, an endless task with no meaning beyond itself. This child was reminding him what it meant to be a hero. Not just powerful, but someone who cared. Someone who chose to help because it was the right thing to do. While Lily read stories to an ancient dragon, halfway across the galaxy, military ships were dying. Captain James Cooper stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant, one of Earth's most advanced warships. 2 more Earth vessels flew in formation with him. They represented humanity's best technology, best weapons, best hope. Approaching Breach 7 Alpha, reported his tactical officer, a young woman named Stevens. Distance, 500,000 kilometers. Through the main view screen, Cooper saw something that made his blood run cold. Space itself was torn open. It looked like reality had been cut with a knife, and through the wound, absolute nothingness poured out. Not darkness, darkness was something. This was the complete absence of everything. Looking at it made his eyes hurt and his mind feel fuzzy. Sensors? He asked. Nothing, sir. It doesn't register on any of our equipment. It's like it's not even there. But we can see it. Yes, sir. We can see it consuming everything it touches. Cooper had read the reports. 3 military vessels had investigated other breaches. They'd gotten too close and they'd simply ceased to exist. No explosion. No wreckage. Just gone like they'd never been there at all. Get full readings but stay at maximum safe distance, Cooper ordered. I want to know everything about this thing. For 10 minutes they scanned the breach from a distance. The readings were impossible. Physics didn't work right near it. Time moved differently. Reality itself was breaking down. Then without warning the breach expanded. It doubled in size in seconds, reaching out like a living thing. Sir. Stevens shouted. The breach is expanding. It's moving toward the Harrison. The Harrison was one of their escort ships, positioned 200,000 kilometers away. Cooper watched in horror as the breach swept over it. The ship didn't explode. Didn't break apart. It just stopped being there. One moment it existed. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space where it had been. Full retreat. Cooper screamed. All power to engines. Get us out of here now. The Valiant and its remaining escort ship turned and ran at maximum speed. The breach chased them for a few terrifying minutes before it finally stopped expanding and settled back to its original size. Cooper slumped in his command chair, breathing hard. They'd lost 38 crew members on the Harrison. Good people. Gone in an instant. 2 days later he stood before the Galactic Council, giving his report. His hands shook as he spoke. Whatever these breaches are, our weapons are completely useless against them, he said. Ships that get too close just disappear. We can't fight it. We can't stop it. We can barely even study it. He looked around the chamber at the representatives from 100 different worlds. I'm going to say what everyone's thinking. We need the Guardian. Without Verathorn we're all dead. It's that simple. Silence filled the chamber. Everyone knew he was right. And everyone knew the Guardian was gone. Back on Ashera Prime, Lily had no idea that reality itself was falling apart. She was too busy teaching Shimmer how to play tic-tac-toe, drawing the grid in the dirt with a stick. It's easy, she explained. You just try to get 3 in a row. Watch, I'll show you. Verathorn watched the child play her simple game, and something inside him shifted. For 10,000 years he protected the galaxy out of duty. Because it was his purpose, his function. But this child believed in him. She saw him as a hero not because of his power but because of who he was. Maybe that was what he'd been missing all along. A reason to care. Someone who mattered. The bond between them grew stronger every moment. And with it, Verathorn's power slowly began to return. Retry. Halfway across the galaxy, in a hidden base that existed between dimensions, alarms suddenly started blaring. Scientists and soldiers rushed to their stations, staring at screens that showed impossible readings. Supreme Architect Derek Hayes stood in the center of the war room, his face lit by the glow of holographic displays. He was tall and thin, with cold gray eyes that never seemed to blink. For 200 years he'd been waiting for this moment, dreading it. Confirm those readings, he said, his voice perfectly calm despite what the screens were showing. A technician's hands shook as she worked her console. Confirmed, sir. Energy signature matches Verathorn's unique pattern. The Guardian is alive. The signal is coming from Ashera Prime, a small colony world in Sector 9. Hayes allowed himself a thin smile, though there was no humor in it. After all this time, we thought the prison would hold forever. Commander Scott Blake, a heavily built man covered in cybernetic enhancements, stepped forward. His artificial eye whirred as it focused. How is this possible? We built that prison using ancient technology. Nothing should have been able to weaken those barriers. They were designed to last millions of years. Clearly something has changed, Hayes replied, studying the data. The barriers have been degrading slowly over the past few months. At this rate, Verathorn will regain full strength within weeks. Another officer spoke up. Sir, if the Guardian awakens fully, then everything we've built collapses, Hayes finished coldly. The Galactic Council has been searching for their precious Guardian for 2 centuries. They don't know that we're the ones who imprisoned him. They don't know that we've been secretly causing the void breaches to expand. The room fell silent. This was the dark truth at the heart of the Architect Collective. For 200 years, they'd positioned themselves as the galaxy's protectors, offering their advanced dimensional gate technology to worlds desperate for safety. Governments paid enormous sums for their services. The Collective had become the most powerful organization in the galaxy. But it was all built on a lie. They needed the void breaches to continue. Needed the fear. Needed the chaos. Without the threat, no one would need their protection and their power would evaporate. Verathorn, if he returned to full strength, would seal the breaches. He would expose their deception. He would destroy everything they'd worked for. We have no choice, Hayes said quietly. Deploy Strike Team Alpha. Kill the Guardian while he's still weak. And eliminate anyone who's seen him. No witnesses. No evidence. No loose ends. Blake's artificial eye glowed red. With pleasure, sir. 5 black ships materialized in orbit above Ashera Prime hours later. They were sleek and deadly, designed for one purpose: assassination. Each carried a team of enhanced soldiers, beings who had been surgically modified to be faster, stronger, and more lethal than any natural creature. Jack Morgan was outside fixing the fence line when he saw them descend through the clouds. The ships moved wrong, too smooth, too predatory. This wasn't the clumsy bulk hauler that brought supplies once a month. These were military vessels. And they were heading straight for his farm. Beth, he shouted, dropping his tools and running toward the house. Beth, get Lily. Now. Inside, Beth was folding laundry when she heard her husband's panicked voice. She dropped everything and ran to Lily's room. Her daughter was reading on her bed. Lily, we need to go. Right now. Beth's voice was urgent but controlled. What's wrong, Mom? No time to explain. Come on. But what about Shimmer? Lily asked, thinking of her friend in the cave. There's no time. Beth grabbed her daughter's hand and pulled her toward the back door. They never made it. The front door exploded inward. 3 soldiers in black armor burst through, moving with inhuman speed. They weren't entirely human anymore. Their bodies had been enhanced with mechanical parts and genetic modifications that made them into living weapons. Jack threw himself at the first one, swinging the wrench he'd been carrying. It connected with the soldier's helmet with a loud clang, but the soldier barely flinched. A metal hand grabbed Jack by the throat and lifted him off his feet. Run. Jack choked out, struggling against the iron grip. Beth ran out the back door with Lily in her arms, but more soldiers were waiting. They'd surrounded the house. There was nowhere to go. Commander Blake walked slowly through the ruined front door, his boots crunching on broken wood. His weapon was already charged and humming with deadly energy. He looked around the simple farmhouse with disgust. This is it? This is where the Great Guardian has been hiding? He laughed coldly. How pathetic. Beth held Lily close, backing toward the caves. Please. We don't know what you're talking about. We're just farmers. We haven't done anything. You've been feeding the Guardian, Blake interrupted. Helping him recover. That makes you accomplices. His weapon swiveled toward Lily. The child especially. Our sensors show a bond forming between her and Vera Thorne. Interesting. I've never seen a Guardian bond with a human before. Lily stared at the weapon pointed at her. She was only 7 years old, but she understood what was happening. These people wanted to hurt Shimmer. And they were going to hurt her family too. Terror flooded through her. Pure, absolute fear. In the cave, Verathorn's eyes snapped open. He felt Lily's fear through their bond like a knife to his heart. Someone was threatening her. Someone was going to hurt the child who had saved him, who had shown him kindness when he was at his weakest, who had reminded him what it meant to care about something. For 200 years he'd been trapped. The energy chains had held him. The barriers had contained him. He'd been too weak to break free, his power drained by centuries of imprisonment. But something had changed. The bond with Lily had given him strength. Her visits, her food, her stories, her friendship, all of it had fed his recovery. And now, feeling her terror, feeling her desperate need for protection, something inside him snapped. Not the chains. Not the barriers. His restraint. The mountain exploded. Stone and earth vaporized instantly as Verathorn erupted from his prison in a pillar of cosmic fire that shot up into the sky like a miniature star. The shockwave flattened trees for miles. The entire planet trembled. His wings unfurled, vast beyond comprehension, each one large enough to cover a city. They spread across the sky, blocking out the sun, casting the farmstead into shadow. His scales blazed with inner light, no longer dull and cracked but gleaming like molten metal. His eyes burned with starfire. His roar shook the world. It wasn't just sound, it was power given voice, reality itself bending around the fury of an ancient being who had been wronged. The architect soldiers, these enhanced warriors who feared nothing, froze in absolute terror. This wasn't the weakened creature they'd expected to find. This was the Dragon Guardian at the peak of his rage. Verathorn moved faster than something his size should be able to move. One massive claw swept through the nearest black ship, tearing through advanced armor like it was paper. The vessel exploded in a ball of fire. His jaws opened and what came out wasn't fire, it was concentrated stellar energy, the same power that burned at the heart of stars. The beam caught the second ship as it tried to escape, and the vessel simply melted, dripping molten metal as it fell from the sky. Commander Blake fired his weapon at the dragon's chest. The shot was powerful enough to destroy a tank. It hit Verathorn dead center and simply stopped, frozen in midair by forces Blake couldn't begin to understand. "You imprisoned me," Verathorn's voice boomed across the landscape. It wasn't just heard with ears, it resonated in bones, in minds, in souls. "You left me to waste away in darkness. You thought me forgotten." The dragon's claw shot out, grabbing Blake and lifting him up to eye level. The commander's armor groaned under the pressure. "I would have let you live with that shame," Verathorn continued, his voice deadly quiet now. "I would have been content to simply be free." His eyes blazed brighter, cosmic fire reflecting in Blake's terrified face. "But you threatened the child." Blake screamed as energy consumed him, not burning but simply unmaking him at a molecular level. In seconds, there was nothing left but ash drifting on the wind. The remaining architect soldiers didn't try to fight. They ran for their ships, desperate to escape. 2 vessels made it into hyperspace. The third was too slow. Verathorn's tail swung through it like a bat hitting a ball, sending it tumbling into the forest where it exploded. Then, suddenly, there was silence. The battle had lasted less than 2 minutes. 4 ships destroyed. Dozens of soldiers dead. And standing in the middle of it all was a dragon of legend, breathing hard, his scales still glowing with residual power. Lily wriggled free from her mother's arms and ran toward him. "Shimmer." "Lily, no." Beth tried to grab her, but her daughter was too fast. The massive dragon, this being of cosmic power who had just destroyed military vessels with ease, lowered his enormous head gently to the ground. Lily threw her arms around his snout, hugging him as best she could. "You saved us," she whispered, tears running down her face. "You saved my family." Jack and Beth stood frozen, staring at the impossible scene. Their 7-year-old daughter was hugging a dragon. A real, actual dragon who had just emerged from a mountain. "Lily," Jack finally managed, his voice hoarse. What I asked that?" Lily looked back at her parents with a smile, as if the answer was obvious. "This is Shimmer. His real name is Verathorn. He's my best friend." She paused, then added proudly, "And he's the guardian of the whole galaxy." Verathorn's ancient eyes met Jack and Beth's gaze. When he spoke, his voice was gentler now, but still carried unmistakable power. "The child speaks truth. I am Verathorn and I have protected this galaxy for 10,000 years. Your daughter saved my life when I was at my weakest. For that, I am in her debt." High above, more ships were dropping out of hyperspace. But these weren't black and predatory. These bore the symbols of the Galactic Council, representatives from 100 worlds, all coming to investigate the massive energy surge that had just been detected. Verathorn looked up at them and sighed. "And now," he rumbled, "the complicated part begins." Within 6 hours of Verathorn's awakening, the sky above Ashera Prime was crowded with ships. Not just a few, hundreds of them. Massive battlecruisers from the Human Defense Fleet. Sleek vessels from the Centauri Alliance. Living ships grown by the Botanical Consortium. Crystal structures piloted by silicon-based life forms. Every major civilization in the galaxy had sent representatives. A backwater farming colony that most people had never heard of had suddenly become the most important place in the universe. Ambassador Thomas Grant stood in the Morgan family's living room, which had been hastily converted into a diplomatic meeting space. Military officers, alien diplomats, and government officials crowded into a house that normally only held 3 people. And through the window, Thomas could see something that made the whole situation feel surreal. In the backyard, a dragon the size of a small building was having a tea party with a 7-year-old girl. Lily had set up her toy tea set on an old blanket. Verathorn lay curled around her, his massive head resting on the ground so she could reach it. She was carefully placing plastic cups near his claws and explaining the rules of proper tea party etiquette. "This is insane," muttered General Patricia Wilson, head of Earth's military delegation. "We're conducting first contact with a legendary cosmic entity, and he's playing pretend with a child." Jack Morgan, still looking shell-shocked, just shook his head. "Ambassador Grant, I'm a farmer. I fix tractors and grow vegetables. This is so far beyond anything I can handle." "You and me both," Thomas admitted, adjusting his tie nervously. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. It showed Council Prime Vareth, the 4-armed alien who led the Galactic Council. Her usually calm features were tight with stress, her skin showing color patterns that Thomas had learned meant extreme anxiety in her species. "Guardian Verathorn," Vareth said, her voice formal. "We require your immediate presence at the Void Breach sites." The situation has deteriorated significantly. Reality itself is collapsing at an accelerating rate. Outside, Verathorn lifted his massive head from the tea party. His voice, when he spoke, was deep enough to rattle the windows. I am aware of the situation, Council Prime. Then you understand that time is critical. Every hour we delay, we lose approximately 3 more colony worlds to the void. Entire populations are being erased from existence. We've evacuated what we could, but millions have already died. The weight of those words hung in the air. Millions dead. And more dying every hour. I understand, Verathorn replied quietly. Varetha's hologram moved closer, her alien eyes showing something that looked like desperation. Guardian, you must know what we're going to ask. To restore your full power, to operate across dimensional barriers as you once did, you must sever the bond you formed with the human child. You must return to your original state. Lily looked up at Shimmer, not fully understanding the technical words but sensing something was wrong. Beth spoke up from where she stood near her husband. What does that mean? Sever the bond? Thomas turned to her, his expression grim. It means he has to cut off his connection to Lily completely. Guardians exist partially outside normal reality. To use their full power, they can't have attachments to the physical world. No connections. No relationships. Complete isolation. But he'll forget her? Beth's voice rose. He'll forget everything they've shared? Not forget, Vareth explained. But it will become meaningless to him. He'll return to being a cosmic force, operating on levels we can't comprehend. Personal relationships won't matter anymore. He'll be pure purpose again. Lily stood up, her small hands clenched into fists. No, that's not fair. Shimmer isn't just some tool you can turn on and off. Lily, sweetie, Beth started, but her daughter shook her head. The little girl had felt Verathorn's memories through their bond over the past weeks. She'd seen glimpses of his long existence. 10,000 years of standing guard. 10,000 years of performing his duty without joy, without companionship, without anyone caring whether he was happy or sad or lonely. He'd just been expected to do his job forever, like a machine that never breaks down. Then the Architect Collective had betrayed him. They'd chained him, imprisoned him, and left him to rot on a forgotten planet. For 200 years he'd lain in that cave, getting weaker and weaker, with no one to talk to, no one to care, slowly fading into nothing. Until she'd found him. Lily walked over to Verathorn and placed her hand on his scales. They were warm, pulsing with inner light. Shimmer, she said softly. You have to go save everyone, don't you? The ancient dragon's eyes that had seen galaxies born and die, looked down at the small child. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Yes, little one. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she tried to smile. It's okay. I understand. Heroes have to do hard things. That's what the stories say. You have to save all those people. Thomas Grant felt something break inside his chest watching this. A 7-year-old child was trying to be brave, trying to give up her best friend because it was the right thing to do. It wasn't fair. None of this was fair. There has to be another way, Thomas said, his voice rough. Some other option that doesn't require her to lose him. There is not, Vareth said firmly, though Thomas could hear regret in her voice too. Guardian, the void breaches are expanding exponentially. Our scientists estimate we have perhaps 3 weeks before the cascade becomes irreversible. After that point, the breaches will merge and the void will consume the entire galaxy. We need you at full power. We need you now. The room fell silent except for the quiet sound of Lily crying. Verathorn was still for a long moment. Through his bond with Lily he could feel everything she was feeling. Her sadness at losing him. Her fear of being alone again. Her desperate wish that there was another way. But also her acceptance, her belief that he would do what was right. She had absolute faith in him. Not because he was powerful. Not because he was the guardian. But because she believed he was a good person who would make the right choice. When had anyone ever had faith in him like that? In 10,000 years, when had anyone looked at him and seen anything other than a tool to be used? No, Verathorn said quietly. Varetha's hologram flickered like she'd been hit with static. I'm sorry, Guardian. Did you say no? I said no. Verathorn rose to his full height, his wings spreading slightly. Even though he was outside and they were viewing him through the window, everyone in the room instinctively took a step back. I refuse. General Wilson's face turned red. Guardian, billions of lives are at stake. You can't just. I have spent 10,000 years performing my duty, Verathorn interrupted, his voice growing stronger. 10,000 years maintaining the barriers. Fighting the void. Protecting the galaxy. I did it all in complete isolation with no connections, no relationships, no purpose beyond the mechanical act of sealing breaches. He looked down at Lily, who was staring up at him with wide eyes. I was powerful, yes. Effective, certainly. But I had forgotten why any of it mattered. The worlds I protected became nothing more than territories on a map. The beings I saved were just numbers in a report. I maintained the barriers because it was my function, not because I cared about what lay behind them. Thomas found himself nodding slowly, beginning to understand. This child, Verathorn continued, his voice softening, reminded me why it matters. She showed me kindness when I was at my weakest. She sat with me when I was alone. She treated me not as a tool or a weapon but as a friend. She made me remember what it feels like to care about something. That's very touching, Guardian, Vareth said, her voice strained with barely controlled panic. But it doesn't change the reality of our situation. Without your full power. I am not refusing my duty, Verathorn said firmly. I am refusing to go back to the old way. There is another path. Ancient. Dangerous. Never attempted with your species. Vareth's skin color shifted to a pattern that Thomas recognized as shock. The Covenant bond? Guardian, that ritual is forbidden for good reason. Human lifespans are barely a century. You exist for eons. When she dies, and she will die, perhaps in just a few decades, the pain of that loss could shatter you. It could leave you weakened, vulnerable, unable to perform your duties. Then I will deal with that pain when it comes, Verathorn replied. Perhaps that pain will teach me something. Perhaps it will remind me that loss is the price of caring, and caring is what makes any of this worth doing. Jack spoke up, confused. What's a covenant bond? Thomas explained, working through his own understanding of the ancient lore. Instead of severing the connection to Lily, he wants to make it permanent. He'll anchor part of his cosmic consciousness through her, making her his herald. His living connection to the physical realm. Through her, he'll maintain his full power while also keeping his ability to care, to feel, to remember why he's fighting. But the architects will target her, General Wilson said. They'll try to kill her to weaken him. Verathorn's eyes blazed with cosmic fire. Then they will learn what it means to threaten something the Guardian loves. Let them come. Let them see what happens when someone fights not just from duty, but from devotion. Lily tugged on Verathorn's foreleg. Does this mean you're not leaving? The dragon lowered his head until his enormous eye was level with her small face. I must leave to fight, little one. But I will always come back to you. Are you willing to be my herald? To carry part of my power within you? Will change you. Make you different from other humans. Lily thought about it seriously. Will it hurt? No. Will I still be me? Always. And we'll still be best friends? Verathorn's rumbling laugh shook the house. For as long as you live and perhaps beyond. The bond between a guardian and his herald is eternal. Lily smiled through her tears and threw her arms around his snout in a hug. Then yes. Let's save the galaxy together. Vareth's hologram seemed to sag. The Council will not approve this, Guardian. Many will see it as weakness. As irresponsible. The Council, Verathorn said, his voice turning cold, abandoned me when I was attacked. They searched for 2 centuries but never found me. A 7-year-old child succeeded where your entire organization failed. I will protect the galaxy on my terms, with my herald at my side, or I will not protect it at all. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Thomas Grant smiled. It was the first real smile he'd managed since this whole crisis began. Sounds like you have your answer, Council Prime. Vareth sighed, a very human gesture despite her alien appearance. Very well, Guardian. But if this bond becomes a weakness, if it compromises your ability to protect the galaxy, then I will face those consequences, Verathorn said. That is what it means to love something. You accept the risk of loss. You accept the pain that might come. Because having something worth protecting is better than being powerful and empty. He looked down at Lily again. Are you ready, little one? Lily nodded, brave and bright and completely unafraid. I'm ready, Shimmer. Then let us forge a new covenant, Verathorn rumbled. And show the galaxy what happens when a guardian has someone to fight for. The ceremony was scheduled for dawn. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on the Morgan farm. A place that had been completely unknown a week ago and was now the center of galactic attention. Military officers stood beside alien diplomats. Scientists set up recording equipment to document what was about to happen. News crews from 100 worlds beamed the event live across space. Verathorn had spent the night carving stones from the mountain with his claws. He arranged them in a perfect circle in the clearing behind the house, each stone standing twice as tall as a man. Ancient symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with inner light. The markings were older than human civilization, older than most species in the galaxy. They were written in a language that existed before language itself, the fundamental patterns that reality was built upon. Lily stood in the center of the circle, wearing her favorite dress. Her mother had insisted she look nice for what was essentially the most important ceremony in galactic history. The little girl looked tiny surrounded by those massive stones, but she stood straight and brave. Beth held Jack's hand so tight her knuckles turned white. "Are you absolutely sure about this, sweetheart?" she called to her daughter. "Once this happens, there's no going back. You'll be connected to him forever." Lily looked at her parents and nodded seriously. "Shimmer needs me, Mom. And I need him too. We're best friends. Best friends don't leave each other." Jack wiped his eyes. His little girl was growing up way too fast. Ambassador Thomas Grant stood nearby with a recording device, documenting everything for the official council records. General Wilson had her hand on her sidearm, though what she thought she could do if things went wrong, Thomas had no idea. You couldn't shoot a cosmic entity with a pistol. Vera Thorne entered the circle, his massive form seeming to fill all available space despite the clearing being quite large. His scales gleamed in the early morning light, shot through with veins of silver and gold that pulsed like a heartbeat. His wings were folded, but everyone could see the cosmic energy rippling across them. He looked down at Lily with ancient, knowing eyes. "Are you ready, little one?" "I'm ready, Shimmer." The dragon began to speak. But it wasn't speech as anyone understood it. The sounds that came from him were older than words, older than language itself. It was the fundamental tone of creation, the vibration that existed before the first star ignited. Reality itself rippled and bent around the syllables. The recording equipment started going haywire. Screens showed impossible readings. Several devices simply shut down, unable to process what they were experiencing. "I, Vera Thorne, guardian of the cosmic threshold, protector of the Great Barrier, do forge this bond freely and of my own will," he spoke, his voice now in a language everyone could understand but which still carried that fundamental power beneath it. "I name Lily Morgan as my herald, my anchor, my living connection to this realm and all who dwell within it." Light began pouring from the dragon. Not regular light, this was pure cosmic energy, the stuff that stars were made of. It flowed from him in ribbons of silver and gold, spiraling through the air like living things. The ribbons moved toward Lily. She stood perfectly still, watching them come with wide eyes but no fear. When the light touched her, she gasped. Power flowed into her small body, vast ancient power that should have burned her to ash. But it didn't overwhelm her. Instead, it felt warm, like being wrapped in a blanket on a cold night. Like being hugged by someone who loved you completely. The light sank into her skin, disappearing beneath the surface. For a moment, nothing seemed to change. Then Lily opened her eyes. They weren't fully human anymore. Flecks of starlight danced in her irises, tiny points of cosmic fire that swirled and moved. When she blinked, trails of light followed. "Oh my God," Beth whispered. Lily looked around, and her expression was one of pure wonder. "I can feel everything," she said, her voice filled with awe. "The whole galaxy. All the stars. All the worlds. There are so many people. So many lives." Tears ran down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "It's so big. So beautiful. How did I never know it was all out there?" Verathorn's voice spoke in her mind, gentle and warm. "And now, little one, you are part of its protection. You are my herald. Through you, I will remember what matters. Through you, I will find the strength not just to seal the barriers, but to truly care about what I'm protecting." The ceremony was complete. The bond was forged. And Lily Morgan, 7 years old, had become something unique in the galaxy, the herald of the Guardian. Thomas Grant would later write in his official report, "Today I witnessed a guardian remember how to care, and a child take on responsibility that no one should have to bear." Yet somehow, watching her stand there with starlight in her eyes and a smile on her face, it felt right. It felt like this was always supposed to happen. Within 3 hours they departed for Sector 7. This was where the largest void breach had torn reality apart across half a dozen star systems. Millions of people had already been evacuated, but entire worlds had been lost. The Galactic Fleet formed an escort, 300 warships from every major civilization, all following a dragon and his herald to face the end of everything. Verathorn flew through space itself. He didn't need a ship. His wings moved through the fabric of reality, propelling him faster than any vessel could travel. Lily rode nestled between his wings, protected by a bubble of breathable atmosphere that moved with them. She should have been terrified. A 7-year-old girl flying through the vacuum of space on the back of a cosmic dragon, heading toward a tear in reality that consumed everything it touched. Instead, she was ecstatic. "This is amazing," she shouted, laughing with pure joy. "Shimmer, look. Is that Jupiter? The planet with the red spot?" Through their bond, Vera Thorne felt her wonder, her excitement, her complete lack of fear. It reminded him why any of this was worth protecting. The galaxy wasn't just territory. It was full of beings like Lily, curious, brave, capable of finding joy even in the strangest circumstances. "Hold on, little one," he said through their mental link. "We're about to face something very dangerous." "I know, but I'm not scared. I'm with you." That simple statement, "I'm with you," gave Verathorn more strength than 10,000 years of cosmic power ever had. They arrived at Sector 7 to find hell waiting for them. The void breach stretched across millions of kilometers of space. It looked like someone had taken a knife and cut reality open, and through the wound poured absolute nothingness. Not darkness. Nothingness was worse than darkness. It was the complete absence of everything. Matter, energy, time, space, all of it simply ended at the breach's edge. And pouring through the breach came ships. Black vessels covered in symbols that hurt to look at. The Architect Collective had brought their full military force. Hundreds of warships, reality-warping weapons, dimensional mines. They'd had 2 centuries to prepare for this moment. Supreme Architect Hayes appeared on all communication channels, his face twisted with hatred. "Verathorn, you should have stayed buried. Our new order doesn't need ancient relics clinging to outdated ideals. We've evolved beyond your primitive notions of duty and sacrifice." "Your order," Verathorn replied, his voice shaking space itself, "ends today." The Architect fleet attacked as one, unleashing weapons designed to tear apart dimensional barriers. Reality-warping missiles streaked toward the dragon. Dimensional cannons fired beams that could erase matter from existence. Verathorn moved through it all like he was dancing. His wings carved through space, his claws swept aside missiles, his tail knocked warships tumbling. But he wasn't fighting with just raw power anymore. Through his bond with Lily, he felt her presence. Her hope for all the people they were going to save. Her faith that good could win. Her simple, absolute belief that heroes protected people because it was right. Before, when he'd fought the void, Verathorn had done it through sheer cosmic strength. He'd forced reality back into place through power alone, like hammering a nail into wood. It was effective but brutal, and it left scars. Now he understood something deeper. Lily showed him through their bond what she felt. Not strategy or tactics, pure emotion. She thought about her parents waiting for her at home. About the other kids on Ashera Prime who'd become her friends. About all the families across the galaxy who deserved to live their lives in peace. Every world behind that void breach had people like her parents. Children like her. Lives worth protecting. Verathorn dove into the breach itself, and Lily gasped as reality bent around them. It felt like being underwater, except the water was made of nothing. It tried to pull them apart, to erase them. But Verathorn pushed back. Not with force this time, with purpose. With meaning. With the absolute conviction that what lay behind him was worth fighting for. Cosmic fire poured from him, but it wasn't cold and calculated anymore. It burned with warmth, with life, with love. He didn't just seal the breach, he healed it, weaving reality back together with threads of starlight and hope. The void recoiled. It couldn't stand against a guardian who fought not from duty but from devotion. "Lily," Verathorn said through their bond. "I need you to be very brave now. Show me why this matters. Show me what we're protecting." Lily closed her eyes and thought about everything good in her life. Her mother's laugh. Her father's strong hands fixing things. Playing in the garden. The smell of fresh bread. Watching stars at night. Teaching Shimmer to play checkers. All the small, perfect moments that made life beautiful. Through their bond, Verathorn felt it all. And it filled him with power that no amount of cosmic energy could ever match. The power of caring, of connection, of having something precious worth protecting. He roared, and reality itself answered him. The breach sealed. Not just here but throughout Sector 7. Verathorn's power, amplified by his herald's unshakable faith in goodness, rippled across the galaxy like a wave. Void breaches that had been growing for 2 centuries suddenly stopped. Then reversed. Then sealed completely, reality knitting itself back together. Supreme Architect Hayes watched his carefully built empire crumble in minutes. No. This isn't possible. We planned for everything." "You planned for a guardian doing his duty," Verathorn said, appearing before Hayes' flagship. You didn't plan for one who had learned to care again. You didn't account for love. He scattered the architect fleet with a gesture, not destroying them but banishing them to the far edges of the galaxy. Broken. Defeated. No longer a threat. The battle was over. Captain James Cooper's voice crackled over the fleet communications, filled with awe. Guardian, the breaches. All of them. Across the entire galaxy. They're closing. They're actually closing. Lily had fallen asleep against Verathorn's scales, exhausted by the experience. He cradled her gently as he flew home. Rest, little one. You did well. Now we go home. They returned to Ashera Prime as the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Verathorn landed softly in the Morgan's yard, careful not to crush the garden that Beth had planted. Lily stumbled into her parents' arms, yawning but smiling. We did it, Mom. We saved everyone. Beth held her daughter and cried. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. So proud. Jack looked up at the massive dragon who had become his daughter's partner in protecting the universe. Thank you. For choosing her. For coming back. I should thank you, Verathorn rumbled. You raised a child who reminded me that power without purpose is meaningless. That duty without devotion is hollow. Within days, the Galactic Council established a permanent embassy on Ashera Prime. The Forgotten Colony world became the most important location in the galaxy, because wherever the Herald lived, the Guardian would return. And Verathorn kept his promise. Every night, no matter where duty called him, he came home. To a small farm where a little girl waited to tell him about her day, to share her homework, to remind him what he was protecting. The other colonists got used to seeing a cosmic dragon at tea parties, letting Lily paint his claws, listening patiently to stories about playground drama. Isn't he scary? A visiting diplomat once asked Lily. She looked at Verathorn, ancient, powerful, capable of reshaping reality itself, and smiled. Nope. He's Shimmer. And he's my best friend. Years later, historians would debate the Covenant bond's significance. But they all missed the point. In a cave on a forgotten world, a lonely dragon had found what he'd lost over 10,000 years, a reason to care. And a little girl had taught the galaxy's greatest guardian the most human truth of all. We're strongest when we fight for what we love.